Everybody, are you ready for Mr. Simon Raymonde's Belly Union?
Our tea.
Careful now. So Simon, I want to start with, what's the nature of an independent label now? We're veterans of post-punk and independent music, and what it was in the late 70s, early 80s, is it quite different from what it is now? Or are you working very much creatively in the same kind of space? I mean, you have top 5 albums now, which is unthinkable that time.
It certainly is. I think it isn't. For me, it's not much different because, it's still all about physical mostly. That's the thing that excites me more than the digital world. So I still approach it with the same kind of naive enthusiasm I did as a 15-year-old buying records. That's how I look at it. I'm not just a fan of music. So for independence to me is just about being able to do what you want to do without someone, tut-tutting or saying, no, you shouldn't really be doing that. I'm just very, very lucky that I came through a period in culture and music that made me feel that was quite alright to be like that.
The music kind of changes, but so the actual structure and the ethics stay very, very similar.
Yeah, that's it. I think, since streaming and Spotify and all that came along, obviously everything's changed, digital marketing. There's so many things that artists can do for themselves to get on, and record labels to a degree have become less important. I do fight that one a little bit because I know that bands do love, well, ours do anyway, love to have a team, love people there who are looking after their back, watching for what they're doing, helping them in their career. Because some artists do need help, others don't. Others just want to put their stuff out, don't need a team and can crack on. So I just think the fact that there's choice out there for people is amazing. Because before there wasn't, you couldn't do it yourself. Now you can absolutely just make your music and put it up online tomorrow, and it could be heard by somebody and used in a show or something. You don't need this team behind you, but back in the day, you 100% did.
So in a sense, is DIY or independence actually bigger? It's actually become the model for making most music outside.
Yeah, I would say so. There's so many artists that prove that the case, yeah.
So with Belly Union, what defines it? Is it an aesthetic, or is it just what intrigues you about a group and you kind of make sense of it yourself?
As far as the A&R part of it goes, it is really simple. There's just listen to a lot of things and get super excited about them or not. I think what defines whether I sign a band has changed a bit. I think before I might have just gone on the music and not delved into the personality so much and the team behind the personalities. I think now it's really important because it is such a high intensive job, it's like 24-hour work. You need to be able to go to bed knowing that the people you work with are good people. So I really try and make sure, as much as possible, and it's never 100% possible, always try and make sure that the people who we work with are good souls and are not going to be a massive pain in the backside. Because I've had some that are, and it's stressful. It just is. It just takes over too much, and you're there at 11 o'clock at night, wondering what the hell you're going to do, you can't sleep, and when it's stressful and someone's bugging you or a manager is being too obnoxious or whatever it is, it just stresses you out. So I try and make sure that by the time we get to a contract, that stage where it's sort of formal, I'm as close to certain as I can be that the people are sound.
So it's interesting because I speak to Alan McGee now and then. He always says he collects people more than the music. So is that a version of that, but a bit more of a gentle version? Because he collects people, I'd imagine, are quite difficult to work with often, aren't they?
I suppose there may be a similarity there. I don't think I've ever thought that I could be similar to Alan, but...
No, I don't mean in the way that it's working with people. The music's there, of course the music's really important.
Well, that's the thing. I would say of course the music's going to be good, because that's what excites us all. I could sign a band every 10 minutes based on the music, but that's not the point. The point is, when you're doing an independent record label, you obviously, it's a small team, everyone's really into it for the right reasons, not the wrong reasons, there's not much money involved, so obviously you want it to be stress-free. It can't be possibly stress-free, but you know what I mean, you want it to be fun and enjoyable, and relationships develop and be built. And I've got an instinct for that, right? I know pretty much as soon as I met someone within a few minutes whether I think they're going to be good or bad. And I've made some terrible mistakes in the past, but I've sort of learned it, through mistakes.
When you listen to music and you sort of look at the things that you signed, are there certain things you feel just connect with you, or is it so diverse, or is it indefinable? You just, it's just on instinct, you love it, but you have no idea why I love this, but I've got to release it. Or are there certain things that, of course, I will sign that, that's very me?
I think it does vary. I mean, Fleet Foxes is a perfect example of the first example you gave, where within 10 seconds you're like, oh my. I heard this demo of the song White Winter Hymnal, which became a massive track for them. I heard it when I was in Norway for a festival. I was just about thinking of jacking in the label, actually. I was miserable with how things were going, financial problems and all the stuff that lots of people who run independent labels encounter. And I was having a bit of a moment, only for about 10 minutes, but I was having a moment. And I went up to my room and I had a message on MySpace.
Wow, it shows how long that is.
And somebody said, oh, you've got to listen to this band. I think it was the booking agent, the American booking agent, Trey Lenny, who did Beach House with us. So he sent me this message saying, I think you really like this. And I pressed play, and literally, as I say, within 10 seconds, I was like, okay, I have to sign this. I listened to the rest of it, of course, have to sign this band. And if I don't, then I'm probably going to give this up. So sometimes it takes over your being to the point where you just have to listen to a song. It's like when you're a kid and you listen to John Peel under your pillow or whatever before you went to bed, and it's like what I did, and you just become obsessed by tracks and you have to listen to them hundreds of times, and the satisfaction just sort of grows and grows and grows. I'm still a bit like that. Obviously I've got a ton of things going on in my life, so probably don't have the time to listen to it 100 times, but there is that in me, whereas there are other bands, I don't know, like Money, of Manchester band, or Pins, who, when I saw them, they weren't the finished article, right? They were just sort of exciting in that kind of like, well, when I went to see the Slits or something when I was 15, I'm like, it wasn't the best music, but it was just exciting and a vibe, and I was just totally inspired by it. It's a bit like that. Sometimes you see the progress in your mind of what it might become in several years' time, even though right now it's like, it's exciting. It's not brilliant, but it's exciting. I think they will be brilliant next month. That's what I'm sometimes buying into as well.
That's really interesting, because that's a very different way of working. That's classic, almost old school A&R, where you work with somebody because you know there's something in there. They might not even know there's something in there themselves, and you have to pull it out without ruining it. I mean, or do you just let them develop by themselves?
It really does depend again. There's no hard and fast rule. But someone like Beach House, I'll go to Beach House for an example. I mean, it was probably their third or their fourth record before they started to achieve the kind of success that we'd all hoped they would achieve to start with. And now, why is that? It's not like I didn't see it at the beginning. I thought they might get there a bit quicker. I just think the audience took a while to warm up to it. I don't know why. Maybe it was more here than there, to be honest, in the States. I think they did get bigger quicker. So sometimes I don't have to do anything. Like a band like that, they don't ask me for advice because they know what they want to do, so I don't offer it. I'll only offer advice, or not even advice, just like feedback on tracks or a producer or studios or demos. I'll only offer it if I'm asked. Because obviously I'm talking to them in the first place, it's because I like them. And I trust them that over time they will get better. If they want some help in getting better quickly, I can maybe help. Maybe not, but that's always there, but I don't sort of push it, do you know what I mean? I'm not like, okay, I'm the A&R guy, you will do this and go in the studio with this person. I don't do that. unless they say, could you help us with that? And I'm like, oh, sure, of course I can.
I mean, is there an element of trust from the bands because you're a musician as well, and you're still a musician, and you can produce and play? So do the bands look at you in a different light than maybe other record labels?
Maybe they do now. Maybe they did back then. I'm not sure. I mean, no one comes and says, oh, very few people come and say, I'm a huge Cocteau Twins fan or whatever, a huge fan. Most people just a bit nervous or excited to be talking to a label when they're young bands. So you sort of take that into consideration. But I suppose now, because I've been doing it such a long time and the label's 25 years old, I guess people have got lots of things to look up about me and find out, oh, he did that and they did that, and there's history there. So it's not like I'm some newbie who they don't know that they can trust. And I'm pretty, I'm an open book really as far as on social media goes. If anyone writes to me, I'll answer them. I'm not like hiding away, being mystified.
Well, I was going to ask about that because you're also like a record shop person, really, aren't you? I mean, you talk about before, the 14-year-old kid would listen to John Peel and Pillow, which is very defining, I think, for a lot of people from our generation. Also, you worked in record shops, and you still had record shops in the pandemic. Is it really?
Yeah, I was doing it, yeah.
Yeah, you still got a record shop, right? And that's, very public facing, and it's still the ultimate fan's dream is to work at a record shop, isn't it? So, is that very much part of the process? Is the label almost an extension of being the record shop?
I mean, it's a romantic thing as well. I think not just for me, but for me and my wife. I met my wife in Canada, in Montreal, and we spent a lot of our first couple of dates. So, they weren't dates at the time. They were just like, let's go record shopping. But they sort of were us, each other, feeling each other out, and kind of enjoying spending time together. And when, the more we got to know each other, the more we realised how much we loved being in record shops. I'd obviously talked about my first job being working at the Vegas banquet shop, and actually that job really is why I'm sitting here today.
Really, from that to cocktails.
Yeah, because one thing led to another. 4AD was upstairs, Situation 2, my own label, for my little punk band, Driving Praise, that was upstairs. So everything started in that shop in South Kensington. So it's very special to me, shops. Record shops have always been the place where I go and make friends with the owner. And what my wife, I think, was Abby. She said, "Where are you?"
She just popped out of the record shop.
You should probably check in our feed because it's record store day today, so our shop is open and we want to make sure we're selling some records. Mm-hmm. She saw this little shop in Brighton for rent down this little alleyway and sent me a text and was like, because I think we'd said, wouldn't it be amazing to have a record shop? Because when we were living in London, there was just no way we could afford to have a record shop. The rentals for property were just extortionate. But this place was like 10 grand a year. I mean, it's tiny, it's literally the size of your bathroom, but it still felt like it could be something. And I was like, yeah, we could have a record shop. Why don't we have a Bella Union record shop that only sells Bella Union stuff? I mean, it's the ultimate fantasy, but it was small enough for that not to seem strange.
Mm. I mean, the thing about the record shop, yeah, of course, it's selling music, it's selling your music in there, but is it also the people that just come in, maybe don't even buy a record, and you just engage with lots of different people all day who love music as well? And is that part of the whole process?
It's so beautiful. Mm. I mean, it's a tiny shop, so as you say, lots of people come in just maybe wanting the latest Fontaine's DC record or whatever, and then you get involved in the conversation, explain what it is we do, and they're like, oh, cool, okay, and then you play them some stuff, or they look through and they go, oh, Ezra Flam, I didn't realise she was on your label, or John Robb, I didn't realise. You get a lot of that, and I think, because labels aren't really that interesting to the general public. Fair enough. So when they sort of start joining the dots, it becomes interesting, and then 2 or 3 hours can pass by and you're sat having a chat with people. It's really beautiful because they now go away knowing a bit more than they did when they came in and maybe having heard some music that they hadn't before. So that is, of course, a really beautiful thing. Actually, a lot of our staff came in that way. A lot of kids came in to buy records.
Never left.
Never left. I mean, to be honest with you, that is so true. The guy, Jake, who works for us, he came in. I think he used to come in. When he worked somewhere like, he works in Marks and Spencer's now for like a proper job, but he worked somewhere else like some store, and every week when he got his wages, he would come and buy something. I think he bought 65 records off of us, and he's literally 18, 17 years old. So he was an uber fan. And then after a while, we were like, Jake, you know more about this than we do. Why don't you come over this side and start working here? So, yeah.
Does he get free records now?
He does, yeah. We let staff have like one free record a week or something like that.
That's quite generous. Yeah.
Well, we're only open 3 days a week, so.
So what's your musical background? Your father was a musician and he played in just Springfield Records and lots of records in the 60s. I mean, I guess in the punk period that was still very alien, but what's quite interesting now is you almost make music that sort of fits, and you put his record out as well years later. It's kind of interesting journey, it's kind of gone full circle.
It's beautiful to be able to do that. Yeah, my dad was it's hard to say he was an inspiration, because obviously, you know, a father with that amount of amazing musical history behind him should be, but because he died so young, and I was like a snotty nosed punk when I was 15, 16. I wasn't really that impressed by my dad until he passed away. And then as the years wore on, I suddenly kind of realised that it's not just the Dusty Springfield, David Bowie, Scott Walker stuff, Walker Brothers stuff that he did. There was thousands of other tracks that I was actually even more interested about, like Northern Soul tracks, and you know, work with the OJs, just like a huge range of people that I didn't know anything about. So probably age kind of 40, I started going, blimey, my dad was very cool, but I think he's even more cool than I realised. And I started really deep diving into YouTube and Discogs and record shops and just finding more and more and more about him, trying to collect as much stuff, mint copies of everything that he did. That's what I started doing. Not with a view of putting a record out initially, it was just with a view of, I don't know, just being close to him, you know what I mean, in that way. Because I was close to him as his son, but like not, you know, in the 60s and 70s, it was a bit like be seen and not heard.
Was he quite a stern father?
No, he wasn't, but just that was the vibe in those days. In fact,
yeah, like a lot of distance.
Yeah, my mum and my dad were not huggy, cuddly types at all. You know, my dad was always away. He was always away. And my mum had four kids to look after, so she wasn't, you know, hanging around giving us all colours and stuff. That just wasn't her. So this sort of connection with my dad came, you know, probably 20 odd years after he would pass on.
So he was doing like the string parts and the orchestrations, was he? Or
No, he did everything. I mean, he sang, he played piano. I mean, he started off as a busker in East End, that's how he started. And then he got a job working on the Queen Mary, going from Southampton to New York, in a jazz trio, like, you know, white suit, and he played piano. And then he got some work at the BBC doing stuff like Hancock's Half Hour, doing the...
Which he actually acted in as well.
Well, acting is a bit strong. He was an extra. And he sort of did voices like that, you know. All right, Tony. You know, did sort of Cockney voices and stuff. Terrible, really embarrassingly bad. So he did a lot of that stuff. So the discovery was quite late in life, and being able to collate this all into a sort of collection and then work out if I could license some of this stuff from some of the labels that still owned it. Most of the stuff is all still owned by Universal. So I just looked into it and ended up licensing I did 2 compilations, one with stuff that people would know and some other stuff, and then the second one was a bit more the obscure stuff.
It's a really brilliant thing to do.
It was one.
At home, watch because he's working. Of course, he knew he had a relationship with it, but was collecting the music and putting the music out and doing the deep dives on YouTube. Does that bring you close to him, not just creatively as a person?
Yeah, 100%. My mum had written a book about his life. Well, she was writing it, you know, when he passed away, and then she sort of finished it, I think, in the years after. I mean, my mum and dad had a really beautiful relationship, and I guess, he died in 1989, so my mum just died a few years back. So she was on her own probably 30 years, and she never once went out with another fella, which is unusual, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, what was the question again?
It was about getting close to it.
Yeah. So that's right. So I found this hard drive on her computer after she passed away with the drafts of the book that she'd written about him, and actually that really gave me some insight into the family history and him growing up. So yeah, reading that and then having this collection together, it's a bit like, yeah, I've kind of drawn a line under that thing nicely now.
I mean, he wasn't there that much because he's working, but was there music in the house? Would he come home occasionally and bang something out the piano or?
Well, he did do that. I mean, he was actually, I think he was in a Christmas episode of EastEnders, playing the piano in the old Vic, is it? Yeah. I've never seen it.
So was he like a professional cockney then or something?
He liked to think he was, yeah. No, he did like to play the piano at home, but more for sort of Christmas events and whatnot. But, you know, we were all like, we were just like any kid would be about their dad playing the piano in a cheesy way. It wouldn't be like, wow, Dad's playing the piano. You know.
So what's the first music you call your own? I mean, was it the zeitgeist punk rock moments, or was it like that little bit just before the glam rock on top of the pops moments? Or
What my own music?
For you personally?
Well, personally, actually, it was. I mean, yeah, it was never mind the bollocks actually, because I think my brother either exchanged his guitar for a bass or bought it off. He bought Pat Collier's bass.
Oh,
Pat Collier was a bass player in the Vibrators.
And a producer as well.
Yeah, I don't quite know how he got hold of Pat Collier's bass, but I think my brother he got on the guitar but didn't really want to be a guitar player, so he swapped it for a bass and then decided he didn't want to be a bass player. So he gave it to me for my 50th birthday, I think.
Well, so I never knew there was a Vibrators Cocteau Twins connection.
There's so many connections you wouldn't know, but we've only got an hour. So yeah, he gave it to me, and I think I was just getting into punk at that point. And I remember going to buy Elvis Costello, My Aim Is True, and Never Mind the Bollocks on the same day. And we were living at my parents' house in Wimbledon, and I went to, I think it was Small Wonder Records or something near the station, bought these two albums, came back, and I just started playing the bass along to Never Mind the Bollocks, and I like learnt the whole of the album in like an hour, and I was like, blimey, that's easy. That was so easy, I'll be a bass player, and that's really how I got into it. I know it sounds ludicrous, but it's true.
So punk had a massive impact on you, not just because it's easy to play. Those records, I mean, Never Mind the Bollocks is a genius record, a fantastic record. So were all those records really setting you on fire in a way?
Oh, yeah, 100%. So, yeah, it took over my whole being really. I think because I was the youngest of four, and my older sisters were, into sort of Carole King and, Beach Boys and all that sort of thing. And then my brother, who's 6 years older than me, was into kind of Little Feat and the Doobie Brothers and stuff that I just thought at the time was just hideous. I don't mind it now, I'm quite like it now. But 10cc, actually like 10cc now, never did before. So punk was like, and I hadn't really liked music up until this point. I'd sort of been watching Top of the Pops every Thursday night, was it? With my family, but I wasn't like, I was more into football. And then when punk happened, I was like, the light bulb went on. It was really like that. I was like, okay, this is my thing, and I don't need to listen to your music anymore because I've got my thing. And then, of course, it wasn't just about the music. It was at 15, you're starting to kind of, children these days are starting a lot earlier than 15, but for me, starting at 15 to kind of have some cultural awareness and political understanding of what's going on.
It was a hell of a crash course.
It was indeed, Thatcherism and the miners' strikes. It was an amazing time to be alive and to be that age. And after leaving school, I moved into a bedsit with my best friend Stan, and I had got the job in Vegas working in the record shop. And really sort of from punk through to sort of post-punk, my life was sort of beginning to make some sense to me, and like a job or a career wasn't ever something I ever gave any thought to. They just followed my nose kind of thing, and getting the job in Beggars just seemed to lead into other things. They closed the shop down really quick after maybe like a year and a half of working there. They closed it down. Martin Mills, who now still owns Beggars Banquet, Beggars in 4AD, it was called Beggars Banquet back then. I think him and his partner Nick Austin, they just literally walked through the shop, because 4AD and Situation 2 were above the shop, and everyone had to walk through the shop to get to the offices in the morning. And I actually don't think it was Martin that walked through. I think it was Nick Austin that just walked through one Friday and just said, "Don't bother coming in tomorrow, lads." And we were like, "Why?" And they were like, "We're shutting down." And we were like, "Oh, that was a bit wrong." But I got another job in a record shop called Our Price, which was like a chain. And I worked there for, I don't know, maybe a year or so, a couple of years, and I loved that job. I was like a manager of about 3 different shops. Really loved it. And then I got the call to join Cocteau Twins. And that's sort of how my journey happened.
I mean, coming out of punk, was John Peel the guide, into post-punk? I mean, of course, at the time, no one ever called it post-punk, did they? It just still all felt like punk, really, didn't it? Just a different version of it. But now, historically, it's like a strata laid there, isn't there?
Yeah.
So was John Peel the main guide for you? Or was he actually working in the record shops and people coming in, beggars, people talk about things?
No, it was Peel. I mean, Peel was like so important, and as a young musician in a young band who were trying to sort of get excited about playing shows and whatnot, to be honest with you, getting a Peel session was actually probably more exciting than getting a record deal. I know that sounds daft, but...
No, in that context, that time, that was the thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, it really did. It was like, I remember I was in the flat with Stan, and I think he'd been in all day, and I got back from the shop, and the phone rang, and it was John Waters who called and just said, "We love you." Because what happened was I'd taken a cassette.
This was your first band, didn't it?
Yeah, my first band called the Drowning Craze. We weren't brilliant at all. We were
Well, I beg to disagree.
Oh, we were. There was definitely things wrong with the band, which is ultimately why I left. But we had these few songs, and the thing back then was you could go up to Broadcasting House, and under the Langham's Place, there's that sort of steps like that church, where you could sort of walk through all the ways of Broadcasting House, and it was pouring with rain, and I knew that Peel walked. Everybody knew back then. I don't know why, because there's no internet and there's no mobile phones then, but it was just known that Peel walked this way into the BBC. So I waited for him in the rain with my little cassette of our band. And I spotted him coming, and he was lovely. He must have happened to him like literally every single day.
I did it as well, so
You did it as well.
I was standing up and reading cassettes. It was so pathetic, wasn't it?
It was
a
pathetic.
show business.
So
Wow.
But it was the most exciting thing, and then I completely forgot about it after I gave it him. And then whatever it was, a few weeks, few months, I couldn't tell you. To get the call from John Waters saying, we loved your demo, and why don't you come in and do a Peel session in a couple of weeks? So yeah, I mean, those things was so special. I'm sure there are things like that still happen today. Being excited about music is not exclusive to punks.
Of course, yeah. But that's all we can. That's our
That's all I
context.
can
isn't it?
relate to.
Yeah. So I mean, with that band, it was constantly post-punk, bass-driven. The song structures are odd, off-kilter. I think it's good music. I mean, how much control did you have? Was it like joining somebody else's thing, or was you?
Oh, so it was me and Martha and Paul, who was a guitar player in the band, and we were just instrumental. To be honest with you, for years we weren't even sure we wanted to have a singer, because we sort of liked other things that were instrumental. Most singers we auditioned we couldn't stand. So we were like, let's just be instrumental. But then this guy who ran Situation 2, which they shared an office with 4AD, and they had bands like The Associates and Gina Loves Jezebel and some other things. He come to see us rehearse, and he said, I would sign you, but you definitely need a singer. So what happened? Yeah, so then he suggested this American girl that he'd met, that I think she was singing in this band called Bush Tech. Bush Tetras.
Good
And so he brought her over, or she was coming over, I can't even remember the story now. And we ended up having a rehearsal with her, and it was amazing. So she became our singer after like one rehearsal. Went in the studio, did 2 tracks that were literally just the instrumentals, with 2 of the instrumentals that we've been playing, with her doing her thing over the top. So I was writing the music with my guitar friend, and then she was coming in and doing the vocals over the top, and we were just like, that sounds fantastic. And the first single we put out was like Single of the Week in The Enemy and Single of the Week in Sounds. So we were like, okay, Peel session done. Enemy Single of the Week, Sounds Single of the Week. Well, we can just give up now. That's when it never get better than this. And to be honest, it never did get any better. It was really terrible after that.
That's funny because a lot of bands' creativity goes into the first record, isn't it? And there are no more ideas or permutations. But it's interesting you say about the way you work there. You do the music, give it to the singer to sing on top. It's how you worked at Cocteau Twins. And the sense how you do it working now.
It is so strange, yeah. And I never thought it was strange until, many years later you start meeting other bands and see how they wrote songs, and the traditional things of sitting down with an acoustic guitar and whatever to get the chords and then working the melodies out over the top. That was so alien to me. It still is in a way, but I guess horses for courses, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, why did you work in the way that you work? Was that just because that's how you started?
In the Cocktails or in the Driving Craze?
In Driving Craze,
I think it was just because because we hadn't found a singer that we liked spending any time with.
It was interesting in post-punk, isn't it? Because nobody actually knew what to do. I mean, nobody knew how to be in a band properly. So every band you meet have these really off-kilter, weird ways of working.
Yeah.
From when they were about 15.
Also shyness, I think. Also, people. Maybe there was no one in our band with that much of a strong personality. We were all quite sort of shy, wanted to be a bit thoughtful about things rather than like, right, this is what we're going to do. We didn't have one of those. Which
is actually quite interesting as well, that a lot of music came out of punk is very introverted. This is sort of the people who got something out of punk didn't all turn into maniacs, they actually turned into this very introverted kind of music, which is kind of, guess what, your music has always happened, and maybe to the label as well, that's kind of part of the vibe of it, isn't it?
Maybe, Jim.
In a good way. Yeah.
Maybe.
You can't, not everybody can be shouting all the time, can they?
No, that's definitely not been my thing. Yeah.
I mean, so when you like working in that period, and it's working in this kind of off-kilter kind of way, and nobody can play guitar solos, and nobody just makes music properly, but you create your own musical kind of language out of that, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously when you're 15, 16, your records you're most likely to have influences of the things you're growing up with, and I can see that very much in my job now, signing bands. Often a first record does sound a little bit like the bands that they love, and I think that's absolutely natural. And to be, not to be criticised, I just think it's normal. But I think the secret is trying to develop your own style as quickly as possible, and not just sort of keep borrowing these things from your own record collection. And that's definitely in the Cocktails. That definitely felt like it happened really quickly. I think even Garland's does have the first Cocteau Twins record that does obviously have flavours of other things that were going on around the time. But maybe fairly swiftly we sort of developed our own sound, and I think that's what most bands will be aiming for. But it's not always easy to make it happen.
So, I mean, even before you joined Cocteau Twins, they'd gone off on a trajectory, hadn't they? Because they were trying to sound like a birthday party, and they never got anywhere near it, did they?
Well, they were all certainly big fans of the 35. I don't know if they ever wanted to sound like them, but yeah, no, that's a big stretch.
Yeah, well, it is, and that's the beauty of it. I mean, I love bands who can't get anywhere near the thing they're trying to be, and then there was something equally genius in the opposite direction.
Well, for sure, Elizabeth Fraser's, and Robin were both, both immensely talented people, and it was always going to come out the right way eventually. I don't think me joining the band in '83 or whenever it was immediately significant, Well, that's not really for me to say, is it?
Well, if you're inside of it's always hard to tell. I mean, what was it like joining? Surely that'd be a really strange world, because they're so, obviously they were going out with each other at the time, but they're from Falkirk, and they must have a really weird, small town, in-joke sense of humour to way, or did you always
Yeah,
feel...
we got on well straight away, because the relationships that had started before with no thought of me being in the band, we were sort of already friends, and they were kind of fans of the Drowning Race. So there was already kind of like, I don't know, a mutual respect there. And I certainly never thought they had a sort of, they were from Grangemouth, I never thought they had a, you know, that kind of small town mentality about them at all, quite the opposite actually. I mean, they were shy, for definite shy, and coming down to London must have been incredibly bit of an eye-opener to start with, you know, from a tiny town into an industrial town like Grangemouth down to London. But they moved down very, very swiftly. So we, you know, became friends really, and started working together actually by a complete mistake. And that's why I think I ended up getting asked to join the band, just again through a complete accident. I was working in, had a weekend job working in a little 8-track, maybe a 16-track studio in Camden, weekend job. And the owners had gone away, and they'd said, you know, if you want to use the studio, feel free. So because I knew they were, Robin was really keen, I think they'd worked with a couple of producers in the past and hadn't really enjoyed it. And I knew he wanted to kind of get more hands-on with the production side. So I said to him, like, I've got this keys to this studio if you want to come over and do something. I'll be there. I can, you know, I don't really know how to use the studio really, but I can make you a cup of tea. So I invited them over. They arrived, and then, you know, Robin put his guitar down and said, right, what do you want to do then? I was like, what do you do? He said, well, I thought you wanted to write some songs with us. I was like, wow, no, I'll make tea, but that's... So he said, come on, let's do something together. So I plugged the bass in, he plugged his guitar in, Liz went out for chips, and then like an hour later, we had this piece of music that actually the recording that we did in that little 8-track, or whatever, 16-track studio, is the finished version. It's a track called Nearly Millinery, and it was on this American album called The Pinko Bake, which was the sort of first introduction for the Cocteau Twins into the US. This little compilation of bits and pieces, and Liz walked back in after getting the chips, and she was like, "That is the most beautiful thing I've ever heard." And we had a lovely time. She did some backing vocals, I think, and then maybe they took the tapes to go and do something with a later date, and we all went home just having had a nice day. I went back to working in a record shop and just forgot all about it really. And then about a month later, I got a call from Robin asking if I would like to come up to Scotland to record with them and join the band. And I was just finishing the Drowning Race and not making it, the things weren't good in that band, and the record shop job was starting to get on my tits. So I was like, how come? And that was it, and here we are.
And that process we talked about before continued. So when you were making an album, you wouldn't write songs and rehearse and go to the studio. You just go in the studio and make up bits of music.
Well, what's funny about those two was, like 4AD would be like, have you got the songs together? And every time, and this continued all throughout our career, whenever any label said, right, you know, are you ready to go in the studio? We go, yes, we've got everything, we've got a lot. We had nothing. We literally had no songs, not even anything, not even demos. We never demoed, you see. We just wanted to go into, and I think that is in a way, explains the sound of the Cocteau Twins a little bit. It explains, improvisation is the wrong word to use because it sounds a bit too jazz, isn't it? But it wasn't improvising, but it was just a case of winging it. So going in the studio, using whatever, whether it's a piece of outboard gear or a pedal, and just plugging it in to make what is a boring guitar sound. Because if you just plug a guitar into an amp, it just sounds boring, it sounds like everyone else. If you put it into some pedal or some bit of gear and just start fucking about with the knobs and twiddling them, all this magic starts to happen. And then the notes then kind of just happen. They fall into place. I don't know why. Journalists used to find it really annoying that we would say stuff like that. They go, the cock just come out of nowhere. And we're like, actually it does. And they're like, come on. But it's true, it does. When you are inspired by the sound of something, notes just happen and your fingers just go in the right place. It could be whether the sound of a piano is very traditional sound, and it's not something that you can get excited about when you're a bit shit at playing it. But if you put it through some pedal and make it sound a bit strange, the notes just sort of happen. And that's how our songs came about. So we would lie and say, yes, we've got the whole album ready, and then we'd go in the studio and just make it up as we went along. Sometimes that worked better than others. In the first album, which was called Treasure, that I was part of, I would say, even though I know a lot of people adore that record and think it's, one of our best, I definitely feel it's a bit unfinished because we only had a certain amount of time in the studio. I think it was 2 weeks and a week to mix it or something like that. So if you can think that we didn't have anything on day one, and then 3 weeks later we had a mixed record, that's quite a lot to be doing with people you barely know. I knew them a little bit, but spending time in the studio with 2 other people who, as you say, are a couple, it's quite a weird dynamic. It took me a few days to kind of get a hang of it. But the musical part, obviously fueled by an incredible amount of drugs, was great fun. I like smoking drugs, lots of smoking.
Which enhanced the sound.
It definitely enhanced the sound, even if it was just to our own ear. So that's kind of how that whole way of working came together. We'd do some music, Liz would go off and do her thing, and maybe we'd sit in another room, and we'd create the instrumentals and pretty much have 10 instrumentals totally finished. Just imagine you were in a studio with a band who just made a whole song with all the instruments and all the vocals. You just took all the vocals out. What you're listening to is what we did, but we did it 10 times before Liz ever come in and did any vocals. She would save them up to the end, which is quite an unusual way to work.
It's quite interesting because what she did is similar, because she would just make the words, often she would use proper words, but also sometimes words that were juxtapositions made up words. Yeah. So she used to make things that sounded good, but they had a meaning. You could feel the meaning, even though it wasn't telling you directly. So she's doing the lyrics in a similar way to the way you're making the music, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's a whole another interview altogether, is asking Liz about the creation of the lyrics, because I'm sure it does vary from song to song as well. But she definitely was fascinated by words and the look of words, or the sound of words, the shape of words, all that kind of thing. Whereas we just got on with it, and we just concentrated on the music. It just the two things together just seemed to work. But again, it's like how I couldn't tell you. No,
you don't unpack it. That's the worst.
I don't want to know.
But it's all an instinct. You just know when it's good, and you're all trusting your instinct, aren't you? That's, I guess, what's going on there.
Eventually, I think to start with, you're still feeling each other out a little bit. Like to start with, I would, maybe think, well, maybe I'm just maybe if I had an idea for a piano part or a guitar part, I would feel a bit like, is it all right for me to suggest that? Have I got the confidence to do that, or am I going to piss him off? So it took a little while to get over some of those humps, but that's natural for any band. But it was great because Robin and I did used to trade off with each other and actually creating music with him for the longest part of our career was immensely good fun. Yeah.
And then, of course, like anything, it unravels in the end. I suppose because the relationship was ended, etc. That creates, for 4 years that carried on. There's a lot of tensions, and eventually, probably like most bands, it has to have an end, doesn't it? That's okay, isn't it?
Yeah. I know people more in the band, and listen, I have done as well. It took me a long time to get to sort of totally process what happened and realise that I could make music with other singers. I sort of got in my mind that like any other singer wouldn't be as good, so therefore I should just not bother.
It's a very high bar.
Yeah, I know, just really daft way to look at things. But that's kind of what was going on in the back of my mind, and maybe starting the label, because the label was started to put out Cocteau Twins records, right? So that's how the creation of Bellini, that's how it became a label. But we weren't ever expecting to sign any bands. That was so to sit here 25 years after that. It seems insane to me. We started a label, put out Cocteau Twins records, didn't put any Cocteau Twins records out, and signed loads of bands. That was never the plan.
Yeah, and you weren't really meant to be running it. You and Raymonde's label, weren't it, initially?
Yeah, we started together, but only to put out Cocteau Twins records. We hated record labels. This is sort of like the idea of having one. It's like, oh.
So it kind of a happy accident. You just
Well, I think it was more because the band broke up, and then I was like, okay, well, what am I going to do with my time now? Because I'm sort of an all or nothing kind of person, I really want to sort of throw myself into something, or I'm not interested. So I think because I didn't have the band anymore, I thought I'll make a go of this. I'll maybe see how it goes for a year. And 25 years later, I'm still making a go of it.
I mean, initially though, that first year, did you not think about playing in another band or looking for another band? Or
I didn't.
Creating another band built around
I didn't.
Pat Collier's bass?
No, that had gone long ago. I didn't. Maybe, I haven't thought about that before actually. I think Robin did jump right back in. He started a band called Violin Dinner, and yeah, maybe because he'd done it and it hadn't really sort of taken off for him with that band. Maybe subconsciously I was like, okay, this is going to be a difficult thing to do. Maybe we should just sit back and watch a few other bands do it. And then I, obviously discovering John Robb, Zaz in the year after we started, working with him straight off. A lot of these things were quite time consuming, and they were with people that needed a lot of attention. So I didn't really have enough time because I was like a young father at that point, and can't do everything.
I mean, did you quickly work out how to run a record label? I guess because you weren't
No, I did not.
So even though you've been around that kind of world
No,
for a
it took
time.
me 10 years
Yeah.
to work out what the fuck I was doing. I literally had not a clue, and I got it wrong so badly so many times. But it's like anything, isn't it? If you with a relationship with your girlfriend, your boyfriend, whatever, you get it wrong. And you learn a lot more about when you get it wrong than when you get it right. Because when you get it right, you're just like blah blah blah, having great fun, don't realise what's going on. But when things go wrong, you're like, oh, okay. So we work with totally wrong people, distributors, press people, because I didn't know who those people were. Who are all these people in the industry? I don't know who they are. I've only ever met a journalist or other bands. I haven't met any of the other people.
Oh wow! So after all that time you've been in the Cocteau Twins and part of what we would perceive up north as the London music scene, you actually didn't know anybody.
No.
So it was a myth going to London.
It was. You did the right stay where you were. Yeah.
Yes, so you just worked it out as you went along, basically like being in the band was as well.
Yeah, and just making a total pig's ear of it. And I think it was, so we already started in 97, I think probably 2001 when I signed Live to Experience, the band from Texas. And then the whole kind of Texas thing happened with Midlake, and a few other artists that followed, and then Fiona Regan then got Mercury nominated. I think that was 2006 or something like that. And then the Midlake record happened, and then the Fleet Foxes record happened. It was probably, around about then, even though there are days where I was thinking, I don't think I can do this anymore. It's just so draining. God, these bands, they just want so much from you. And I don't even think I'm very good at this. I can tell you if I like a piece of music or not, but how to sell records, it's just mystifying. I really didn't have a clue how to get a band from because the biggest selling record we had around about 2006, 7 was Midlake's The Trials of Anarchy Panther. I think it did 30 or 40,000 records, which to me, for
I mean, the bands would be quite chuffed with that now. I'm getting to #1 right now. But back then, that wasn't very, well, it was many, but it wasn't huge. And I felt that that record should have sold 1 million records. When I first got the finished version, I was like, this is going to sell 1 million records. And I felt a bit like that with Fionn Reagan's The End of History, which beautifully did get nominated for a Mercury Prize, didn't win it, because I think Amy Winehouse won it that year. But recognition was coming our way, and critical acclaim for records like Zars, for records like Midleg, for even going back as far as Lived Experience, Andrew Bird. There was lots of critical acclaim, but I still felt, you know, it all just seemed quite elusive. I didn't really know how to go from being a kind of credible Mojo 5-star artist in the paper to actually selling enough records to pay the staff. Well, that was my big problem, and I just found it quite stressful getting to the end of each month, wondering like, how am I going to pay the rent? And
So
then,
did you find out, or was it just happening?
I signed Fleet Foxes. That's what happened,
So it
really.
was just having good taste that chimed with a million other people's tastes.
And I get a bit of luck, and having a couple of friends in high places in the music business who believed in me. So there was a guy at V2. V2 were kind of one of the bigger independents then. I couldn't tell you which bands they had, but you probably know better than me. But they had some big bands. I think they had Mercury Rev, and anyway, that's some great bands. And they liked my stuff. They liked the things that I was signing, and they licensed Live to Experience record off me in France, I think, and then that did really well. So when the shit hit the fan, which it did twice in a very short period of time, in 2006 and 2007, I almost went out of business twice, right? So Pinnacle, who are one of the biggest UK distributors, were our distributor, and I think what happened was we just signed Fleet Foxes, we were about to put the record out, and there were 50,000, well, I guess it was CDs and vinyl, but there were 50,000 physical records in a van, and I was having a meeting with one of the guys, a label meeting with one of the guys from Pinnacle, and he got this call, and then sort of suddenly went white as a sheet. And after he got off the call, we were like, "What's up?" And he went, "Look, Pinnacle's just gone bust." And one of my smart friends who works somewhere else managed to get that van diverted to somewhere else, because had it gone to where it was meant to go, the records would have just gone into receivership or whatever, and we would not have had a strong chart position. And it's really like sometimes, well, it's just in life, isn't it? Sometimes the difference between like why we're here sitting here or not on the street corner with a dog and a bottle of whiskey, it's such a fine line, isn't it? It's like, you know, just something went my way rather than didn't at certain points. And I think that was one point where I was like, okay. And then a week later, someone came in and said, we'll help you out, and we'll come and work with our company. And just a few people at the right moment helped. And then a week later, or a month later, or a year later, I'm not very good on dates, V2 went bust. So it went from, and Pinnacle owed us 100 grand as well. I forgot to mention that. And 100 grand back then, well, it's like £1 million.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
And I did, you know, we were surviving on hundreds of pounds and thousands of pounds, so 100 grand to be owed is a lot. And I thought, okay, we are not going to come back from that. And then a year later it happened again, V2 went bust, owing us a ton of money. So the fact that I'm still here is not really tested. Well, I am stubborn, I am very bloody minded, and I will. You're not going to defeat me. I am one of those kind of people, but I definitely got some help at the right time from people who sort of in the background said, no, you're cool, you need to carry on doing what you're doing.
So when you got past those disasters and the records were selling, did that change your role in the label? You know, less stressful. You didn't have to be so hands-on every part of it.
No, I don't think so.
Are you very hands-on kind of guy then? You like to keep involved?
I mean, in a way I am, but I don't look at the numbers. I don't look at the streaming things. I don't look at sales. I'm just really not interested in that part of the business at all. And someone all said, you know, well, you run a business, you need to be.
Mm.
And I get that, but I have got a good accountant who will call me up if there's a problem. And I've got a great lawyer who I've known since the Cocteau days. So I've got good people who will advise me and tell me when things aren't going well. But and of course that does happen. But I'm just keeping it really simple. Find music I like, work out whether I like the people, and then try and help them in their careers. That's really what I'm trying to do.
So finally, so you got, of course, the label's well set up now, lots of great bands, it's doing well, it's surviving, but you still have to go back to making the music. So in all that period there, did you, like your father, did you go home and play the piano or pick up the bass, or was it like years you never played any music yourself?
No, it's really true. I mean, I didn't have any musical instruments in the house at one point. I can't really tell you why. I think something psychologically damaged in there.
Yeah.
But the Cocteau breakup is, as I've spoken about it before, it definitely did more damage than good. I know sometimes breaking up from a bad relationship is a positive thing because you can all go off and do your own things and everyone's happy rather than in this claustrophobic, ugly mess. I don't think I dealt with the breakup at all well, but I just, like what a lot of people do when, you know, when you stumble from one car crash into another, you sort of just go from one blinkered situation into another. I was doing that with the label. I was sort of using the label as my distraction. Yeah. And when I worked that out and realised that even though the label had become pretty successful and the band's, you know, 8 albums with Beach House, 8 albums with, you know, all these bands were staying a nice long time, and I felt like, yeah, this is good, this is how it should be. But I'm actually friends with the band rather than I'm over here being the label guy and they're over here being the art. It's lovely, I'm really happy with it, but why am I not feeling totally satisfied about things? And when I worked out that it was, I hadn't actually written any music for a long time. I mean, my wife was really helpful in helping me do that. We sort of got a little studio set up at home, and I think having met her and been in this new relationship, which was very, very positive, it enabled me to, start just actually going, okay, I don't need to be looking at every single email every 5 minutes and working from 8 a.m. till midnight every day on the label. I can actually take a couple of hours out and do something for myself, God forbid. And that's what happened. I worked out that I was actually able to do that. And the label didn't fall into the ground, you know.
So after about, what, I don't know, 15 years, 10 years, you picked up a musical. Which one was it? A guitar, piano, bass? What was it?
Well, I had a piano. I've always played the piano. Yeah.
So you started playing, did you all just pouring out like, wow, that sounds good.
Yeah, and I found totally. It's just like the best. And I found, a bit like back in the Cocteau days, I didn't need to spend a day in the studio. I could actually go in there for like 2 or 3 hours, and I might have written 2 or 3 songs or gotten 2 or 3 things started that I really liked, and then come back in the next day and do a bit more. And before I knew it, I had 16 tracks finished.
And it's collaborative as well, wasn't it?
It was, and it certainly, I've always been, really into drummers, love a good drummer. And one of my old relationships, one of my 4AD friends, is a guy called Richie Thomas, and he was in a 4AD band, an instrumental 4AD band that did a couple of albums, but again,
Diff Jaws
they were called.
Fantastic band.
Yeah, unbelievable and so influential. Even though most people won't know them, those that do will appreciate them enormously. And I'd always love watching him play. We used to take them on tour with us just because they were a fantastic support band, and they helped us build our own studio as well. They were like plasterers and bricklayers, and they were in the building trade as when they weren't doing their band, and they helped us physically build our own recording studio. So we stayed friends with him, and I kept in touch with Richie over the years. A bit like me, he stopped making music. He was in the Mary Chain for a little while. After the Diff Jazz broke up, he joined the Mary Chain. He was also in Moose. You remember Moose? He was in Moose for a while, and top bloke. And I just thought, I I'd love to do something with him. So I called him up and said, do you just fancy just messing him out? Don't want to make a record, don't want to be in a band, just want to be 15 again, just want to get in the studio and just make a racket and just have a laugh, and if nothing comes of it, I don't care. And that's what we did. We did that for like 4 or 5 days, and we had such a great time, and we created so many cool things, and I took them back home. At the time we were living in Hove, in this little studio flat, and my wife was sort of in the process of she just moved, that's right, she just moved to the UK, and I would sort of sit up in this, on this mezzanine overlooking the sea, and stick my headphones on, because obviously couldn't make any noise because it's, you know, in a block of flats. And I just started creating on top of these jams that we'd done. We just literally, I played the piano and he played the drums. And that's how we did it. Or I played the guitar and he played the drums. And that was all we did in the studio. And I took the hard drive home and then just started listening back to it over the next few months. And I was like, oh, that's actually not bad. Piano playing is terrible, but I'll probably fix that some other time. But in the end, by the time I added bass and guitar that was on top, I didn't even hear the mistakes anymore. Because when you are improvising, or whatever it is that we're doing, spontaneous recording, there are loads of mistakes. But what's interesting about music is if you layer stuff on top, it's very quickly those mistakes just, and then you actually start loving the mistakes. And that's also taught me a lot about the creative process. That I don't have to be in the studio for a month creating this thing. I can do it in a couple of hours. So that's my process now. It's all about not taking too long, just having fun with it, and obviously trying to create something special and beautiful, but not having it take over my life.
Yeah, and the wonderful albums. I mean, to get the singers in, did the music suggest the singer to approach, or did you just randomly give the tracks to singers you liked to interpret them in their way?
No, it would take me, well, I don't always take me a while, but when I'm going in the studio every day and I'm working on these songs, perhaps just the process of, okay, what does this song need? Okay, I need to put a 12-string guitar on here or whatever, I'm going to do it. And then, you know, you sit back again and you listen through a bunch more and think, okay, actually, I think that's all right at the moment. It's certainly good enough to send to Richie to see what he thinks about it, because he would not have even heard it since the original recording. And he'd go, yeah, it's great, mate, you know, it sounds brilliant, carry on. So then I would do that. I would just sit quietly and just think, whose voice would sound good on this? And sometimes it would come in a second, and sometimes it wouldn't come at all. And it might be months before the voice came to me as who it should be. But yeah, it always did. I mean, there was only a couple of tracks that I think we started that were never finished.
It's amazing because it sounds so seamless. It sounds like everybody's did it together at the same time.
I think that's the beauty of well, certainly the first record is a bit more rough around the edges. I think the second record, because of the lockdown, it changed people's lives. It really did. It gave people. I mean, obviously the first few months were very difficult for everyone, but I think over time, once we got into 2020, was it? I think people worked out what they needed to do to make it work for themselves, like whether it's get healthy, or go walking, or running, or get a bike, or I was in the middle of this Lost Horizons album, and I wasn't ready to get fit and healthy yet. I did eventually, but I wanted to mix my own record, because the previous one I had someone else that mixed it, and he did a brilliant job, but I knew I needed to do this one. So I was not sure I could do it, because it's not a skill that I have. Mixing is a bit like, it's like maths, it's science, it's like so, and I'm hopeless at both of those things. It requires incredible concentration and detail, granular detail, and fiddling around. And I'm like not that guy, but I forced myself to be that guy for the purpose of the Lost Horizons record. And it probably took me 3 months to mix it, but mix it I did. And I've never been so happy with the sound of a record than that one, ever, in anything I've ever done.
Which is a good point to end. I think we've run out of time. Yeah.
Oh.
So thanks to Simon.